All right, everyone. So we're down to 8 players. We're in the money here in the Big Bet Mixed Tournament from a couple weeks ago at the Hard Rock. There are 7 games in total, so I'm going to actually put the game on the screen just to make it a little bit easier for everyone to follow along. First game we're playing is deuce to 7 single draw. When I look down at 10-6-5-4-2 in the big blind, the under the gun player's name is Mike, pretty cool guy from the LA area. He min clicks it to 10K, folds back to me. And I figure to have the best hand here with a Pat 10, he's most likely going to have a pretty strong draw. So I want to charge him the maximum for that. And I go ahead and put everything in the middle. He ends up tanking for quite a while, probably over a minute, before eventually tossing the chips for a call. So I'm first to act. I stand pat. And he ends up tossing one into the muck, which he later tells me was a 10. And he turns over the 9-7-5-3. So he's got some outs to beat me here. He ends up squeezing out a jack, so we are getting a much needed double up here. We're now down to 7, which means we're at the final table. Here we look down at 8-5-5-4-3 on the button. We're playing deuce to 7 pot limit triple draw. Folds all the way to Mike in the cutoff, who I played against the previous hand. He ends up making it 12K. I then pot it to 45K. Folds back to him, and this time he ends up tossing his cards in the muck, so we're going to take this one down. Shortly after the previous hand, I looked down at ace-9-7-2 single suited on the button. We are now playing PLO 8. The under the gun player is Josh, aka PLO Professor. He makes it 15K. One call to me, I call, and the big blind also calls. So we're going 4 ways to a flop. Flop comes down ace-9-5 with 2 hearts. Checks to Josh, who then c-bets for 50K. Folds to me, and looking at the situation here, I liked calling the least. It just seemed pretty weird given the stack sizes. So I was either thinking about shoving or folding. Now, given the situation, Josh is the chip leader at this point, so he doesn't really have to get out of line. You know, he can just kind of wait to pick his spots and kind of let all the shorter stacks battle against each other. So when he raises under the gun and then leads for 50K on this flop, I mean, it's obviously representing a pretty strong hand here. I don't necessarily just put him on aces, but, you know, if he has a hand such as ace deuce 3, you know, with hearts, you know, he's going to have a good amount of outs to scoop me. I believe if there wasn't hearts out there, I would have went with it, but just didn't end up, you know, wanting to get involved in this particular point. I didn't really think I had much fold equity. You know, I have basically a pot size raise left, so as tight as it seems, I ended up folding, and the other player folded behind, so Josh ends up taking this hand down. About 20 minutes after the previous hand, we're now playing Big O. When I look down at ace-6-4-4 deuce, single suited under the gun, I make it 12K, folds to Josh, who makes the call, and then Donnie in the small blind also makes the call. So we're going 3 ways to a flop. The flop comes down ace-queen-5 with 2 clubs, checks to me, I check, and Josh checks as well. So still going 3 ways to a turn. The turn brings the 7 of spades, action once again checks through. River brings the 7 of clubs this time, bringing in the front door flush. Checks to me once again, and at this point, I assume that I have the best low, so I bet 25K. Josh ends up making the call, and then Donnie also makes the call. I turn over my hand. Josh ends up turning over his. He has the king, queen, 8-7, so he makes the full house, and Donnie ends up mucking. So Josh and I are going to chop it up here. Still on Big O, Mike is all in at risk against Donnie. They get all the money in on the flop of ace-10-8. Turn brings the 7 of clubs. River brings the king of diamonds, and Donnie eliminates Mike in 7th place. Blinds are up, and now we're playing deuce to 7 pot limit triple draw. When I look down at the 8-6-5-4-4 under the gun, I make it 20K, and Josh is the only player that calls. So we're going heads up to the first draw. I, of course, end up drawing 1. Josh draws 2. I check before I look at my card. Josh bets 30K. I look down at the jack of clubs, so obviously not a great card. And problem with this hand, besides being out of position, is it's not really a clean draw. You know, 7 would give me a straight, which is no good in this game. So I could definitely be drawing to a 3 or a 2. Plus, as I mentioned, being out of position just makes this hand a lot more difficult to navigate. So for those reasons, I end up folding. Shortly after the previous hand, we're still playing deuce to 7 pot limit triple draw. When I look down at the jack 9-6-4 deuce in the cutoff, folds to me, I make it 20K. Yuval in the small blind and Josh in the big blind make the call. So we're going 3 ways to the first draw. We end up all drawing 2. I end up hitting a 6 and a 3. Action checks to me. I end up checking back as well. On the second draw, we all draw 1. And I end up hitting the 7 for the second best possible hand in the game, 7-6-4-3 deuce. Checks to Josh, who bets 25K. I end up just making the call to be a little deceptive and not give away the strength of my hand and potentially bring along Yuval. And Yuval does end up calling as well. He ends up drawing 1. Josh stands pat. I, of course, stand pat with the number 2. And checks to me. I bet 65K, hoping somebody hit and something they can call with. But unfortunately, they both fold. So we're going to take this one down. About 45 minutes after the previous hand, we're now playing PL08. When I look down at the ace, queen, 4 deuce, single suited under the gun, I make it 25K. Fold to Josh, who makes the call, and then Donnie in the big blind also makes the call. So we're going 3 ways to a flop. The flop comes down 8-5-3 with 2 hearts. Donnie checks. I bet 65K. Josh is counting out some chips, and he puts 165K in the middle. Folds back to me, and definitely don't love it, but with my stack size here, I don't really think I can do anything here besides shove. So that's what I do. Josh, of course, makes the call. He ends up turning over the ace 10 8 deuce with the nut flush draw, so we're going to need some help here. The turn brings a king of diamonds, so no help to us. River brings the 4 of clubs, so we avoid being quartered and chop it up here with Josh. About 30 minutes after the previous hand, we're still 6-handed, now playing Big O. When I look down at the ace king 6-4 deuce, double suited in the big blind. Player on my left is named Thor. He's from Norway. Really cool guy. I actually played a bunch with him in some previous tournaments. He makes a 55K. Folds to me, and obviously I'm never folding this hand. My only decision was either to raise or just call and evaluate. And I decided to call and evaluate, and we're going heads up to a flop. The flop comes down 7-6-5 rainbow. This flop is definitely good enough to go with, so I pot. Thor has me covered. He goes ahead and reshoves. I, of course, call it off, and we're going heads up to a run out. Turn brings a 3 of diamonds, so a pretty good card for us now, giving us a straight with the nut low and now the nut flush draw. River brings the 8 of clubs. Thor ends up turning over the ace queen 6-3 deuce, so we actually had pretty similar hands on the flop, but we end up making this straight to 3/4 him. The very next hand, still playing Big O. Now I'm in the small blind when I look down at the ace 10 4-3 deuce, single suit in the small blind. Folds to Donnie, who makes it 50K. I call. Thor then shoves for 67K total. Donnie calls and I call. So we're going 3 ways to a flop. The flop comes out 9-7-6 with 2 spades. Action checks all the way to the river after the turn brings a 6 of hearts. River brings a queen of diamonds. And Thor ends up turning over the ace king king 8-3. Donnie ends up turning over the ace jack 9-5 deuce. So everyone bricked everything, and Thor is going to triple up here. A couple hands later, still playing Big O, Donnie is all in at risk against Yuval on the flop of 10-10-6 with 2 clubs. He has a straight and flush draw. Turn brings a 6 of diamonds. River brings the 8 of clubs, and Donnie's going to double up here with the nut flush. A couple hands later, it's Zen's turn to pick. He chooses Hold'em for some reason, and we get dealt pocket queens under the gun. We make it 45K, and everyone folds. So not sure what I'm doing in this game, but happy to take down pot. About 5 minutes after the previous hand, we're still 6-handed. Now it's 1 in the morning. We've been playing over 9 hours. When I look down at ace queen jack 9 rainbow, we're playing PLO. Folds to me, I make it 32K, and only Yuval on the button makes the call. So we're going heads up to a flop. Flop comes out ace 10-7 rainbow. Yuval has about 150K left in his stack, so I just bet full pot. Obviously going to call anything he bets, but he ends up thinking a bit and folding. So we're going to take this one down. So we're still 6-handed. This is definitely the toughest final table I've ever been a part of. I tried to fit all the hands into one video, but unfortunately there was too many. So stick around as part 2 will be posted tomorrow.